I bet just about everyone in this room has had the experience of saying something in a meeting that gets ignored. 10, 20 minutes later, a man says the same thing and everybody thinks it's genius. And I think we should pool our respective reactions so that you have right at your fingertips exactly what to say. Nice thought. A little slow on the uptake, but good idea. And where everyday sexism and structural barriers were once blatant, today they're sometimes harder to spot, but make no mistake, they're still with us. Just look at all that's happened in the last few days to women who were simply doing their jobs. April Ryan, a respected journalist with unrivaled integrity, was doing her job just this afternoon in the White House press room when she was patronized and cut off trying to ask a question. One of your own California congresswomen, Maxine Waters, was taunted with a racist joke about her hair. Going on, I remember I was a young law partner when I was pregnant, and, that was a long time ago. And my partners just didn't want to talk about it. I'd walk down the hall, getting bigger and bigger. They'd turn their heads. And Chelsea came early. I kept raising the idea of, well, what kind of, time off do I get? Well, I'd never had happened before, so nobody was talking about it. So Chelsea comes early. I have her late one night. Next morning, really early, my phone rings, and it's our managing partner. He doesn't say congratulations. He doesn't say hope you and the baby are fine. He says, when are you coming back to work? I said, well, I don't know. And just out of the air, I go, I don't know, maybe 4 months. Well, he had no idea because he had never talked about it with anybody before. And I said, I could probably, pick up some work and do some things in a couple of months. But, let's say 4 months. That was the beginning of our paid leave policy. But I became fascinated by the space program and President Kennedy's emphasis on getting a man to the moon. And so I wrote to NASA and I said, how do you become an astronaut? And they wrote back and said, we're not taking girls. And look, I could have never been an astronaut, let's be honest. It wasn't something that I was ever going to be included in. But being told that I was excluded not because I couldn't meet the physical demands and my eyesight was so bad, but because I was a girl, really stung. And it made me feel like, well, that's just not fair. And then as I went through college and law school, there were lots of different moments when I felt others were being treated unfairly, and I could even see it in my own life, the way sometimes. I'll tell you another quick story. So I wanted to go to law school. I applied to a couple of law schools. I got into Harvard Law School, and a friend of mine who was a student there called and asked me if I wanted to come to a cocktail party they were having for people who'd been admitted but hadn't yet decided. I said, sure. So I go to this cocktail party, and there's a very large, tall, distinguished guy with a literally watch chain across his vest, who is a classic, almost movie stereotype of a law school professor. And so my friend says, do you want to go meet Professor so-and-so? I sure. So I go up, and my friend says, Professor so-and-so, this is Hillary Rodham. She's trying to decide between us and our closest competitor. So the professor says, well, first of all, we don't have a closest competitor. And secondly, we don't need any more women. I mean, this was not in the 19th century. It was in the 1960s. So both from my own experience and watching others, I really was just filled with this fundamental belief that it was not only unfair, it was just plain wrong that you would exclude people on the basis of whatever, race or gender or whatever. And then I had experiences in my own life that said, aha, one of those moments that you don't forget and you kind of keep in the furnace to fuel your efforts going forward.